We're going to talk about some of the other hazards that are facing road construction, and there are a couple that we're not going to talk about. Falls comes to mind, by the way. This is from the bridge in Arizona next to that small little dam that they have. We're not going to talk about fall protection because there's another session on that. Night work is another topic area that will be discussed tomorrow as well. But we do have a couple of issues that we would like to address. One of which is, what kind of information do we have for drivers, and how effective are our drivers at being able to safely traverse our work zones? Okay, if Broadway gets it, how come we don't get it a little bit better? Can you spell positive protection, maybe? We've already pointed out one slide that looked at the concept of speed. Keep in mind that speed is a function stopping distance is a function of the vehicle speed as well as the surface condition. We tend to think 45 miles an hour isn't very fast. After all, we drive 70, 80, 85 on the highway coming into Pittsburgh, right? But 40 miles an hour on a dry road is going to require 300 feet to stop. Something happens and I go, oh, and I start hitting the brake. I'm going 300 feet and I'm hitting everything between me and that. Keep that in mind and make sure your workers understand that. Start talking to them in terms of feet per second rather than miles per hour. Going to talk a little bit about separating workers from traffic. Again, how many people here do not do bridge work? A funny question at a bridge conference, right? How many actually do work in addition to bridge work, other types of highway work? Anyone? Okay, so a good number. We try to tailor a little bit to the bridge. Keep in mind that we were primarily on asphalt paving operations. Of course, every asphalt paving operation we were on, there were some bridge jobs. So we're going to talk a little bit about giving good guidance to drivers to try to keep drivers away from our workers. Those of you who may not be aware, the Federal Highway has a temporary traffic control devices rule that went into effect December of 2008. The purpose is to decrease the likelihood of highway worker fatalities and injuries to both workers and road users. So as Brad was saying earlier, this is where both sides of the barrels meet. Two of the issues that are important here are positive protection and safe entry and exit for vehicles. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Take a look at this photograph and think about the concept of good positive guidance so the motorist knows what's to do and what's wrong with this picture. We're taking an arrow and we're telling the driver to go into the median rather than into the open lane. That's number one. Number two problem with this picture is look at the channelizing devices. The lowest target value available is probably a short tubular marker. The second lowest would be a cone, and the third would be a tall tubular marker. I actually watched somebody almost crash their car trying to avoid a barrel because they didn't know that the barrel wouldn't hurt their car. The general public respects barrels. They don't respect cones. Some other things that you can do to help the motorists know better where they're supposed to be and where they're not supposed to be. You can do the longitudinal channelizing devices, longitudinal barriers like you see in your upper left-hand picture. You can tighten up the spacing on your cones and barrels like you see in the bottom picture. And maybe there are times when rather than having a flagger out there, we want some sort of a traffic control signal, maybe controlled by a human being that's a little bit more out of harm's way, so it's a remote control, but that gives you another option. You may need to move on to positive protection. You may need to move on to the concrete barrier or be looking at crash cushions. We saw, I think it was last night, we were driving Morgantown, we saw this beautiful truck-mounted attenuator. It was a pickup truck with an aero board on the back. We went, oh, I don't know how far, maybe a quarter mile, and then we saw, safely protected by that crash attenuator, something that looked just like this. So think about where you position your equipment. If you're going to be using things like concrete barriers, you have to think about things like what's its end of service life, what condition is it in, can it be reused after a crash, or is it too far deteriorated to be doing its job? Don't forget, you need to worry about providing some attenuation if you have any blunt edges, such as in this particular New Mexico shot. One of the other factors about concrete barriers is we have to weigh the relative risk of the workers that are putting the barriers out versus those who will be protected in the traffic. Too often, I think the decisions are being made based on traffic conditions as opposed to work conditions. The more we can move these kinds of concepts into the planning stage rather than in the construction stage, the more options that we have. We can do some things like, to guide our motorists, we can add some additional signage, such as this no right turn arrow that we have here. That maybe isn't part of the MUTCD, it may not be a part of the minimal package, but it may be just what's needed to provide the motorist with a clear direction as to where he needs to be and not to be. I'm going to talk a little bit about safe entry and exit in work zones. This is out of Arizona, south of Phoenix, and this is the access to the job site. Again, as I just mentioned, too often these decisions of how we get onto and off of the job site with our pickup trucks, with our construction equipment, with our delivery trucks, as well as those who come and visit the site, that's determined in this big picture in the middle after construction's already taken place, and a lot of tools have been taken away from us. If we can move it back into the planning stages and the design stages of the construction project, we have many more options, and you're going to see an innovative one here by the end of the presentation. Agencies should be a partner in this, they need to address a means for work vehicles and equipment to enter and exit traffic lanes and for delivery of construction materials to the workspace based on the project characteristics. So you should find a partner in your state DOTs. DOTs, you should find a partner in your contractors. We need to start thinking about getting people in and out of our work sites safely much more than we do. Of course, this is the ideal site access. You get onto the site without John Q. Public involved at all, so this is what we expect you all to do from here on. Not even a single laugh. This is what we more typically see. Here we have a job site down in North Carolina. A lot of the work's being done to your right-hand side, the median side of the traffic. How are we going to get people in? How are we going to get them out? How are we going to keep them safe? We have trucks that have to come in and out. Dump trucks, concrete trucks, gravel trucks, and every time they come in and out of the work site, they pose a hazard to the traffic, and they pose a traffic to the workers that are inside. My question for you, if you think you know the answer, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll sit here till 5 o'clock. What is the most common method of getting in or out of a paving operation? Anybody know? If you're brave, even shout it out. Dive through the barrels. There it is. I submit we can do better. This is in Indiana. One of the issues that you have is you get 40,000 pounds from 0 to 70 in 3.2 seconds. As soon as Jaguar develops a dump truck that will do that, this may be acceptable, especially if it doesn't have to have friction because it can handle a sloped gravel surface. But this is very typical for how we get our dump trucks out of or into job sites. Agreed? Okay? One thing I would like each of us to do is think about how can we use the information we learned at this conference, at this session today, and actually put it into place so that there's one more starfish in the ocean. There's one more person who goes home at the end of the day. This is a job site where everyone complained about the conditions of getting on and off the job site, but it was a contractor's problem according to the state. It was the state's problem according to the contractor. The trucker thought the contractor should take care of it. The contractor thought the trucker should be better at driving. I don't know. Every single person on site said it was a problem, and no one did a thing about it. If you're on one of those job sites, start the conversation with your partners across the line and start getting some solutions. So what are some things that we can do? You know, one of the issues you have is getting a job off the job site into traffic. All of a sudden, here comes a truck. Typically what we've done in the past is we put out warnings, told drivers, better slow down, slow traffic ahead, be prepared to stop, trucks entering. Another problem we have on job sites is we worry about the motorists coming into our job site. Well, is it any wonder? Here's a place where the ramp comes across the job site. The barrels have been widened out so far for the construction equipment that the driver doesn't know where to go. And which one is the right place for me to go as a driver here? Do I go on the right side or the left side of those barrels? Well, to keep drivers from coming into our job sites, we put a sign that says construction vehicles only or construction don't follow. I submit we can do better. Other problems we have is we put our access points where there are visual obstructions, such as there's one on the other side of this bridge. So now when you look back into the traffic stream that's coming at you, what you see is a bridge abutment rather than traffic. So sight lines become important. Traffic moves very fast by our work sites, and we get high volumes. And we have the problems of equipment backing up into our job site, causing problems on our job site. I think I've said this before. Let's move it back into the planning stages, see if there's something creative we can't do to help trucks get in and out of our job sites. Well, of course, here you see the orange sign again says construction vehicle do not follow. On the right-hand side, you see what we typically do, which is we dive off the job or off the roadway into the job site. Can we create a deceleration lane, since, like you see on the near side here, that will allow trucks to slow down and get into the job site at a safe speed? When we do that, when we do that, right here what I'm circling, there's a no right turn sign for the access into this particular bridge job. We may want some additional signage so we again don't create a problem of the public taking that deceleration lane and winding up in our job site. Minnesota ITS has done something really creative, I think. They have those do not follow signs and trucks entering sign, but they have transponders on the sign and in the truck. So as the truck approaches, then it lights the bottom right-hand two, Jennifer mentioned we like to roam around, right? The bottom right-hand two changeable message signs, trucks entering 2,000 feet, do not follow trucks. Those aren't up static all the time where everyone ignores them. Those are actually signaled by the approaching truck to start flashing and letting people know that trucks are going to be entering at 2,000 feet. This is the concept of an acceleration lane. You can do the same sort of thing. This is what one looks like. Again, you're trying to get from the job site, which is where the main photo is, coming towards you or towards me. On the left-hand side of your photo, there's a break in the concrete barrier there that's designed for trucks to be able to get up to speed and pick a merge point within the gap in the traffic to get back onto the traffic lane. Again, we can do the same sort of thing. We can use our ITS technology that we're beginning to see more of, and we can again now say that trucks are merging, be prepared to stop, those sorts of things. This was an innovation in North Carolina. This was an advantage of a design build project. Steve's in the audience, so if you have real questions, you can ask him. But it was a great idea. We got to do all this work on both sides of the median. This is a capacity building project. Shove all the traffic to the outside, do all the work to the inside. The only problem is somehow we have to get inside. So they took an idea to the state DOT and said, we want this done. And I understand it. The state went, are you crazy? And the more they thought about it, they said, why not? And this is what the idea was. You have a bridge overpass of that interstate system, which you see at the top of the slide there. Build an earthen ramp from the bridge down into the median, bring your construction traffic in and out through that, and this is what it looks like. So back to what I said earlier about if we go back into the earlier design stages, we can create some creative solutions that will solve us a lot of problems. Now what's happening here, you see the dump truck that's leaving the job site. They're going on to Harris Boulevard, which is local traffic. They go a little ways. They got a stoplight right there. They can pull onto the interstate using the existing interstate ramp system. It was, it was a very good scenario. One of the things we have to keep in mind with our access points in terms of keeping our site access points safe is keeping workers and equipment out of those access points. We saw job sites where the process is going all along and all of a sudden a truck goes to come into the job site but something's blocked the entrance and they have to dive back into traffic. That's not a good scenario that we want to avoid. Think about other hazards such as catch basins, utility boxes and those sorts of things. Those don't want to be located where your access and egress points are. What else is going on in your job site and how's that going to change? In this particular job site, they were pouring the permanent concrete barrier down the middle of the road and all of a sudden they obstructed site access from what everyone had been doing and they had to come up with a new place to come onto the job site. That should all be determined in your work scheduling ahead of time. Think about visitors onto site. Do they know how to get onto your job site safely? Do they know where to park when they are on site? Do they know how to get off your job site safely? Those visitors may be expected, such as NIOSH researchers that have made arrangements ahead of time, or it may be unexpected if there's an incident in your job site, whether it's on your side of the barrels or the traffic side of the barrels. Oh, and by the way, it turns out the press really likes to pull off onto your job site to do an evening news story on traffic because it's cool video footage. So how are you going to handle that? How are you going to identify when that happens? What is your conversation with the media ahead of time so that they understand that they need to let you know if they're going to do that and how to get on the job site safely, where to be and where not to be, and how to get off the job site safely? What do you do when your operation has to cut through traffic? This was in Indiana. What we're doing, I call it shooting the ramp. Paving operation goes by an active live exit ramp. How do you get information to the motorists as you're setting up the channelizing devices? Remember the slide I showed you where I said which side of the barrels do you go on? That was from this particular job site. So you need to think about what the driver's needs are. I'm going to skip that one for a minute. Need to think about your end treatments. Your end treatments need to be in good repair. And any of your entrances that are not being used need to be closed off. We have a tendency to put in all the entrances that we need for the entire job and leave them all open so that our drivers can use whichever one is necessary. And the more that we have that are open, the more we have people freelancing where they decide to come in terms of our own workers, and the more likelihood we have of the general public crashing into our job site. So just as a short kind of summary, if we want to get safely in and out of our work sites, we want to think about where we have our access points, have them be control points. We need to think about entering and exiting vehicles. They need to be in the same direction as traffic, but we need to start thinking about ways that we can make it happen at speed, in gaps in our traffic, so that we can avoid the sudden surprises that motorists find when we have a dump truck coming in or out of the job site. We can do a better job of using our signage, and we need to be more creative in the use of our signage, particularly the possibilities with the ITS, I think, are promising and interesting. Not to mention, as that concrete barrier forming team in the middle of our asphalt job exemplified, we need to really work on our work scheduling so that we actually are keeping our access points open. Very quickly, a few resources you may or may not know of. One of the partnerships that we work with is developed a Federal Roadway Safety Plus CD. How many of you are aware of this CD? Okay. Okay. If you disagree with me, raise your hand. This is a very good orientation level training. If you have new people on the job site, you can cherry pick from it on whatever topic you want. It's not going to be the in-depth thing that's going to give you engineering drawings and all this kind of stuff, but if you want a good primer on how to keep yourself from getting killed on the job site, I think this does a great job. Agreed? So those who don't have it, check at the clearinghouse and find out more about that. The clearinghouse got mentioned as well, and this is a web page that we have some of our information on preventing backovers, but I can't push the clearinghouse enough. In fact, NIOSH, as Jennifer mentioned, covers lots of topic areas. I would love to have a clearinghouse for residential building construction if I could only find someone to fund it. Another one for steel erection. I mean, this is just a model that is awesome. Also, I don't think this has been mentioned yet today, but there is a new ANSI standard out that's sort of a vertical standard for roadway construction, and you might want to take a look at that. And with that, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Amazingly, Brad. Any questions? quiet group. Hey, Pam. Yeah, what we find is if you look at transportation-related injuries in highway, street, and bridge construction, about half the workers that are struck by the general motorist, about half are by our own trucks and equipment, and of those inside, 80%, well actually overall, 80% are run over by our equipment or dump trucks. Other questions? Nope, no problem. Typically, Brad steals them off of here and sticks them out on the work zone clearinghouse. So, are you planning on putting the presentations out on the work zone clearinghouse? Right, so it should be there, and come up and get my card, because if it's not on the clearinghouse, it's because I haven't gotten around to getting it to him, and you can call me and harass me, all right? Okay, we have time for one or two more questions before moving on to Pam Susie. Okay, thank you very much, and my final message is, remember, we are not doing enough. The numbers go up, the numbers come down. If you start looking at rates, we're pretty well flatlined. As far as I'm concerned, we are failing, and failure is not an option. We have to do more, we have to do better. So within your job sites, within your sphere of influence, start doing more than you are doing today, tomorrow. Thank you.